The final night settled over us like a shroud. The Atlantic stretched out in every direction, a black mirror under a heavy sky. The air was thick with mist so dense it pressed against the ship as though it wanted to climb aboard. Heavy and wet, muffling every sound but the slow creak of timbers. Even the gulls were gone. That silence gnawed at us. And though no one said it outright, every man on board knew something was wrong. I had sailed for years, crossed through hurricanes and nor'easters, seen hulls split on reefs and men vanish in sudden squalls. But this night was different. There was no storm, no thunder, no visible threat. Just that endless fog, clinging and alive. Below deck, young Daniel, barely 14, the captain's cabin boy, lay awake with his hands folded tight over his chest, whispering prayers under his breath. I heard him once when I passed by, "Deliver us from evil. Deliver us from evil." His voice cracked, childlike, though he'd been at sea nearly a year already. The two older hands, Macready and Johnson, sat at the mess table with a bottle of cheap rye whiskey between them. Normally they'd argue about cards or swap filthy stories, but that night they drank in silence, eyes down, as if meeting one another's gaze might invite bad luck. When I stepped in, they looked away, unwilling to meet mine either. I could almost hear their thoughts. Ask the mate what he thinks is out there. Ask him if he feels it too. But they didn't ask. And I didn't answer. Up on deck, the captain stood at the rail, his shoulders stiff, his eyes fixed on the mist beyond our schooner's lanterns. His name was Charles Hensley, though no one aboard ever called him that, only Captain. He was a hard man, but fair. I had sailed with him 5 years, and I had never once seen his hands tremble. Yet when I came up beside him that night, his knuckles whitened around the rail as if it were the only thing keeping him steady. Neither of us spoke. Words felt useless in that silence. We were waiting, though, for what neither of us dared to say. The fog swirled and pressed, thick as wool, until the air itself seemed to whisper. And then it came a sound that made my chest seize up and my mouth go dry. Oars, dipping slow, deliberate. The rhythm echoed faintly across the still water. One stroke, a pause, another. I froze, the hair at the nape of my neck bristling. The captain stiffened, his head jerking toward the sound. The others below must have heard it too, for I caught the thud of a dropped cup, the sharp intake of breath from Daniel. And then, cutting through the fog, came a voice. "Schooner, ahoy!" But it was no ordinary hail. The sound was wet, hoarse, guttural, like someone calling with water filling their lungs. The captain swallowed hard, then raised his voice, forcing strength into it. "We hear you," he shouted. The words cracked despite his effort, trembling in the stillness. For a moment there was nothing, only the lap of water against unseen wood. Then the reply floated back, mournful and trembling. "Yes, it is I. The last time. The last time I will speak to you." The air seemed to thicken with those words. I gripped the rail myself, fighting the urge to shout for the men to lower sail, to flee blindly from that sound. But the calm sea mocked the thought. There was nowhere to go. The voice went on, breaking, urgent, as though every word cost the speaker a piece of his strength. "My beloved is with me. She rests now, but soon she will rest forever. She no longer walks. Her body bends, twisted. Her skin is gray upon gray. And yet, she still whispers my name, even as her tongue falters. She is no longer what she was, but she is mine, and too am hers. Until the end. A silence followed. Long and aching. The kind of silence that makes your chest hurt. The fog curled thick against the lanterns, as though it meant to swallow the schooner whole. Then the voice rose again. Weaker. We had spoken of leaving, of pushing off into the sea, to let the waves take us. But no, we chose to remain, to vanish here, in the place that claimed us, to spread no further blight, to harm no soul but our own. That is why I feared the light. That is why I dared not draw near. For if you saw us, if you truly saw us, you would curse the day your schooner drifted into this mist. I shuddered, but could not look away from the gray void where the sound drifted from. My mouth was dry, my mind screaming for me to move, to act. But all I could do was listen. The captain wet his lips, ready to call out again. But the voice interrupted, faltering like a candle about to die. We prayed again tonight. Not for life, not for deliverance, only for peace. Only that God may see what love endured even here. That he may take our souls, though our bodies are no longer fit to offer. We go together, always together. The words broke into silence. From below came a muffled sob. Daniel again. Or perhaps Johnson. I could not tell. None of us moved. Then, another dip of oars. Closer now. The fog shifted slightly, revealing a faint blur, a shape rocking low on the water. My pulse hammered so hard I thought I might collapse. Captain, I whispered. But he lifted a hand for silence. His eyes were locked on that faint shadow, his face ashen, his jaw tight. The oars dipped again, their rhythm unbroken, pulling that unseen boat closer and closer to us through the suffocating gray. And still, no one dared breathe. The oars dipped again, steady as a funeral drum. The sound thudded against my ribs like a second heartbeat, and I found myself gripping the rail until my nails bit the wood. The shadow ahead thickened, its outline barely visible through the pale curtain of fog. The captain's voice cut the silence. "Who are you?" he called, though he already knew the answer. The reply came low and trembling. "I am what remains." The words lingered like smoke, bitter and sour in the throat. The captain's face tightened, and for a moment I thought he might command the men to load the muskets. But what good would that do? You can't shoot fog. You can't drive away what you don't understand. The voice lifted again. Urgent now. Spilling from the darkness as though the speaker feared time itself was running out. My beloved, she is with me. She rests now, but soon she will rest forever. She no longer walks. Her body bends, twisted. Her skin is gray upon gray. And yet, she still whispers my name, even as her tongue falters. I felt my chest constrict. His words struck with a cruel intimacy. This wasn't a tale of some distant plague, some rumor carried by sailors in taverns. This was a man speaking of his wife as though she lay beside him even now, clinging to him in ruin. She is no longer what she was. He continued, his voice cracking on the words. But she is mine, and too am hers. Until the end. The fog shifted, and I swore I saw movement, just the faintest sway of a form hunched low in the boat. My throat went dry. The captain, ever the man of command, forced out, "Why do you linger here? Why not seek the shore?" Seek a doctor. Seek. No. The voice cut sharp, though ragged. We had spoken of leaving, of pushing off into the sea, to let the waves take us. But no. We chose to remain, to vanish here, in the place that claimed us, to spread no further blight, to harm no soul but our own. He coughed, the sound wet, as though something bubbled in his chest. That is why I feared the light. That is why I dared not draw near. For if you saw us, if you truly saw us, you would curse the day your schooner drifted into this mist. A chill sliced through me. My body begged to flee, but my legs would not obey. I could only stand there, staring into that shifting gray. Listening. The voice softened, almost tender now. We prayed again tonight. Not for life. Not for deliverance. Only for peace. Only that God may see what love endured even here. That He may take our souls, though our bodies are no longer fit to offer. The oars dipped again. Closer now. Each stroke seemed to pull at my gut, as if the unseen rower dragged me toward him instead of the other way around. We go together, he whispered. Always together. A silence followed, so deep it felt alive. I realized my hands were trembling, though the air was still. From below deck came a muffled crash. Daniel had dropped something. Perhaps the tin cup he used for prayers. His voice followed, cracking high and desperate. Captain. What is it? What's out there? Stay below. The captain barked, his command sharp as a whip. But his tone betrayed him. He was afraid too. The oars dipped once more. The boat was close now, too close. I could smell it, a faint odor riding the fog, like wet earth mixed with something fouler. Something rotting. My stomach turned. The captain's lips pressed thin. I knew that look. He was calculating whether to cut the anchor, to risk sailing blind through the mist rather than face what came. But before he could speak, the voice rose again. Hollow. Almost pleading. Do not fear me. Do not fire upon me. We mean no harm. We have only this night. Only these last words. And then, no more. He paused, and I imagined him gathering breath that no longer filled his lungs as it once had. I was a husband once, he said softly. She was a wife. We danced on summer evenings. We held hands by the fire. We dreamed of children, of fields, of sunlight. But the sea claimed us. And what the sea claims it does not return the same. The words dug into me like hooks. This was no ghost story spun for sailors. This was truth. Raw and immediate. A man broken by love that refused to die even as his body rotted away. The captain's jaw clenched. But he said nothing. What could he say? That the man should let go? That love had its limits? Such words would have been blasphemy in that moment. The oars dipped again, their rhythm hypnotic. The boat loomed faint in the fog, closer than ever. My breath caught, and then silence. The strokes stopped. The voice fell quiet. The mist pressed heavier than ever, smothering us. I leaned forward, straining to see. But the captain raised a hand again. His eyes were wide, his lips pale. We waited. The fog stirred, a faint breeze shifting it just enough to reveal the shadow of the boat, its bow angled toward us. The outline of two figures hunched within. I wanted to scream, to rouse the men, to flee, but I could not move. My feet were nailed to the deck, my tongue glued to the roof of my mouth. And from the mist, soft as a sigh. The voice came once more. God bless you. Goodbye. Goodbye. The words shivered across the water, dissolving into nothing. The oars dipped again, carrying the shadow forward. And as the boat drew closer still, dawn began to stir on the horizon. A single ray of red sunlight pierced the fog. And that was when we saw. The first streak of dawn broke across the horizon, a weak band of crimson fighting its way through the mist. It caught the water in shards of dull fire. And in that brief illumination, the shadowed boat came clear. What I saw will never leave me. The roar-if rower he could still be called was no longer a man. His shape sagged, hunched between the oars, gray and soft like something left too long in the damp. Where his arms met the wood, there was no separation. Flesh or what once had been flesh had fused to the handles, grown into them, as though the oars had sprouted from his body. He moved not with muscle but with the slow, inevitable pull of some growth that had claimed him. His chest heaved with each motion, sagging in unnatural folds, rising and falling like a bellows that had forgotten its rhythm. The head drooped forward, face hidden. But what glimpses I caught made my skin crawl. Patches of skin looked porous, sponge-like, glistening with moisture. Beside him lay another figure's beloved, as he had called her. She slumped low in the stern, her form shrouded in gray folds that I first mistook for cloth. But then I realized it was growth. Fungus upon fungus, layers blooming over one another, covering what had once been a woman. Her hair was gone, her scalp bare, and her face knotted loosely with each pull of the oars. The movement puppet-like, mechanical. The sight struck something deep within Meteor. Yes, but also pity. For beneath that ruin, I could still trace the faint outline of humanity. A woman's delicate frame, the suggestion of features once soft, once loved. I tore my gaze away, my stomach threatening revolt. Macready stumbled onto the deck, whiskey still clinging to his beard. He caught sight of the boat and froze, jaw slack, his bottle dropping to the boards with a crack. The boy Daniel followed, eyes wide, his lips moving soundlessly. When the woman's head lolled toward him, he screamed. A high, piercing wail that cut through the fog. Silence. The captain barked, his voice trembling despite the command. He seized the boy by the shoulders, forcing him back. But even as he did, his own face was pale, his eyes fixed on the thing rowing steadily past. The boat slid within a dozen yards of our beam, close enough that I could hear the water dripping from the oars, could see small rivulets running down the growth that had overtaken the man's arms. They did not look at us. Perhaps they could not. Perhaps whatever humanity remained in them had retreated inward, leaving only these husks to finish their task. And yet, from that formless mouth, the voice rose once more. God bless you. Goodbye. Goodbye. The words broke on the final breath, dissolving into silence. I gripped the rail so tightly my knuckles split, the wood cutting into my skin. The boat drifted past, the figures nodding rhythmically with each stroke. And then the fog swallowed them once again. For a long while, no one moved. The sea lay still, the mist shifting as though nothing had passed. Only the echo of that voice remained, ringing in our chests. Macready was the first to speak. His voice cracked like a boy's. Christ preserve us. What were they? The captain wheeled on him. eyes burning. Not a word. He snapped. Not to the others. Not to anyone. But Captain. Not a word. The silence that followed was heavier than the fog. MacCready lowered his gaze, swallowing hard, and nodded. Daniel whimpered softly, burying his face against the captain's coat. The old man let him, one trembling hand resting on the boy's back. I stood frozen, my breath shallow. My mind screamed to deny what I had seen, to dismiss it as nightmare. But the smell lingered, foul and earthy, clinging to my nostrils. The image of those fused arms, that sagging body, was etched into me like a scar. The dawn grew brighter, scattering the mist into ribbons of light. The sea opened slowly around us, blue breaking through at last. But though the sun rose, I felt no warmth. My skin remained clammy, my chest tight. The captain straightened, his face pale but hard. Best we put canvas to wind as soon as it returns. And until then, none of this leaves our lips. Do you understand? We nodded, though none of us believed silence would purge the memory. The boy Daniel whispered. They were people, weren't they? The captain closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again. His voice flat. They were. I turned my gaze to the horizon, but all I could see was the image of that boat, slipping back into the gray, carrying its two passengers into oblivion. Husband and wife, bound not by rope but by devotion so fierce it endured even as their flesh betrayed them. And in that moment, I understood the true horror. Not the fungus, not the rot, but the love that clung, stubborn and blind, even as the world stripped away everything else. Love that refused to let go, even when it should have. Love that made monsters of them both, because neither could face the end alone. The schooner rocked gently beneath my feet. The wind stirred faint at last, teasing the sails. We would leave soon. We would escape this place. But I knew already would never truly escape. Wind came to us 3 days later. It was weak at first. A hesitant breath that stirred the sails without conviction. But to us it felt like salvation. We raised the canvas with frantic hands, eager for movement, desperate to leave that cursed patch of sea behind. When the schooner finally lurched forward, the timbers groaning like a body waking from fever, a shiver of relief ran through the crew. But relief is a fragile thing. It can't stand long against memory. The fog thinned as we pressed on, breaking into strips and tatters that drifted off into the warming air. The sea opened into vast blue once again, sunlight glittering across it as though nothing unnatural had ever occurred. Gulls returned, crying overhead, their wings flashing white against the sky. To the men, these were signs of deliverance. To me, they were mockery. For in my mind, the fog never lifted. It clung to me even under the bright sun. I saw it when I closed my eye, the boat rocking, the oars rising and falling in that grotesque rhythm. The two figures hunched together in silence. I smelled it still. The damp reek of decay carried on the breeze. And at night, when exhaustion finally dragged me to restless sleep, I heard it again. Schooner, ahoy! The captain kept his word. He told the crew we had drifted into bad weather, that we had all grown restless from too many days without wind. He said the shapes in the mist were tricks of the eye. The voices nothing but echoes carried strangely over water. Most of the men clung to his explanation like drowning sailors to driftwood. They wanted to believe. Needed to. But Macready knew better. Johnson, too. The boy Daniel, though young, had seen enough to scar him. I caught him staring at the horizon sometimes, his lips moving in prayer even when the sky was clear. He would not sleep alone, begging to be allowed near the lanterns, as though the light might ward off the memory. As for me, I carried it differently. I did not tremble outwardly, but inside, I was hollowed. Each time the waves rocked the ship, I felt the oar strokes returning. Each time the wind moaned through the rigging, I heard that voice, "We go together. Always together." The captain avoided my eyes. Perhaps he feared seeing the same reflection in them that haunted his own. Perhaps he simply wanted silence, the only shield left to him. He grew harsher, quicker to scold, eager to keep the men busy. An occupied crew has no time to dwell on horrors. But work cannot erase what the soul has etched into itself. One night, as I stood watch, Macready came beside me. His breath stank of whiskey, but his voice was low and steady. "You saw them," he said. Not a question, but a statement. "Yes," I admitted. "Then tell me, were they alive? Or were they something else?" I hesitated. "Both. Neither. I don't know." He grunted. "I think they were cursed. Maybe by the sea. Maybe by God. Don't matter which. All I know is no man should linger when his time's done. No woman either." He spat into the water. "They clung too hard. That's why they looked like that. That's why they—" His voice cracked. He shook his head, then turned away, leaving me with his words gnawing like rats in the dark. Cursed. That was his answer. But was it mine? Days passed. Then weeks. The schooner made port at last, and the men dispersed to taverns, to families, to beds that did not sway. They told no tales of mist or voices. They carried silence home with them, as the captain had ordered. I returned to land too, but I did not find rest. Even as I walked solid ground, I felt the sea beneath me. In the quiet of my room, I would wake to the phantom dip of oars, the groan of water against a small boat. In the market, I would catch the odor of damp earth and shiver, heart hammering until I realized it was only vegetables piled fresh from the farm. But the worst was the voice. It followed me, soft, half forgotten, like a memory that refuses to fade. Sometimes it was a whisper at the edge of a dream. Sometimes it came clear as if spoken into my ear. "God bless you. Goodbye." I knew then that what I had seen would never leave me. The sea had marked me, just as it had marked them. Not with fungus or rot, but with memory. With knowledge that no man should carry. The captain died years later, never having spoken of that night again. On his deathbed, some said he muttered about fog, about voices calling from the water. I was not there, but I believe it. As for me, I grew older, but the memory did not wither with time. If anything, it rooted deeper, and I began to understand what truly haunted me. It was not the grotesque forms I saw in that boat, not the sponge-like flesh or the fused arms or the bowed head of the woman shrouded in fungus. It was their devotion, their refusal to let go of each other, even as the world transformed them into monsters. Love had endured where flesh had failed, and in that endurance lay both beauty and horror. Beauty, because it proved love's power. Horror, because it showed how love, unchecked, could bind us even to damnation. I could not decide whether to pity them or to fear them. Perhaps both. And so I carried the question with me. Through all the years that followed, was their fate a punishment for clinging too tightly? Or was it a cruel accident of nature, indifferent to love or faith? No preacher could answer. No scripture gave comfort.